is great. Thank you, guys. We're going to bring it home. I have to say, this has been, we're having so much fun, Nicole and Nilu and Meredith and I, thinking about how we're going to do this wrap, because there have been so many great pieces to take home, those great tips. And I was joking with Hilary early, saying she's sort of like one panel wrapped in one, because she's a serial entrepreneur. So she could talk about all kinds of experiences in one person, and that makes you really the rarity, because you've seen so many things from beginning now through end. Yahoo Americas in particular, a $2.3 billion sale of LifeLock to Symantec. That's why, think big, think really big. And now onto WAG, where you have SoftBank as an investor. So this is where, a lot of us, you get up in the morning and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to start my day, and gosh, what's Hilary doing right now? My guess is she's brushing her teeth just like I am and like we are. So I might just dial it back to, what was your path? I mean, you weren't born this way. You weren't born a serial entrepreneur. How did you envision this? Because I think there are a lot of people in the audience sort of thinking, how do I scale personally to come to this? So how did it start?
First, let me say it's such an honor to be in this group and to listen to all the speakers we got to listen to. I feel like I gained a lot of wisdom just in the last...
some great lines.
Yes, absolutely. I think for me, from early on, it was really around wanting to do new things. And it started with, I grew up in Tucson, Arizona. There was no internet. There was no idea of visiting colleges. And the first time I saw my university on the East Coast was when I showed up.
Wow.
And, it was really this idea of, I want to learn new things.
Yeah.
And I think that has been a repetitive theme in my life.
Yeah, and still with what you're doing. And when we talked about your career earlier, you used the word serendipity, and I heard that a couple times, earlier today. I think Caitlin used it. I was lucky, but luck favors the prepared. So, you made some really interesting leaps. I mean, you started out thinking, law school, and you went to business school, and you ended up in prestigious investment bank, and then you got a really interesting opportunity to sort of take a leap off of a, Tell me what it was as you took your first leap off a more traditional path. What was in your mind then, and what has been in your mind since? It was that interest in learning, but there was something more. You were pushing yourself.
So I think one of the things that is also true of me is there is no level of chaos that is too much.
Well, that's good. You're set up for, no wonder you're a serial entrepreneur.
And my husband has asked me this over and over again.
Awesome.
But I started as an investment banker at Drexel Burnham, so was there in the chaos heyday, then moved into corporate development and strategy for a large media company here in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And one of the operating executives said to me, have you ever thought about moving to the operating side? And I thought, well, why would I want to do that? I spent my whole time in business school focused on capital markets.
Yeah.
And then I went home and I thought about it, and I thought, well, why not?
It's great. Really?
Why not?
God, okay, we know I'll need to think about this more. So that was really it. Because your view was, you were at the point, what you were really saying is, I'm not afraid of failing. I could always go back to this capital market saying, you developed a good enough, and I think that's a lot of what, sometimes I would joke with people that if this thing doesn't work out, I know I could be a really good barista. I'm good, I got that covered. And it's great to know that. I mean, and to have that center in yourself. So that's a great attitude, but that's unusual for a young woman, so that's good.
I do think that that's true. I do think that early on, I needed to get to a certain amount of feeling confident that financially I knew how I would make an income, that I'd learned a skill set. But I think that there's that curiosity around, well, I never really thought about this, but it meant moving from the West Coast to the East Coast. It meant my husband, who I met in business school, and I had to coordinate our careers in order to make that happen.
That's hard.
But we both kind of thought, let's try it.
God, that's great. And then from there on, you were comfortable at that point leading. At that point, you knew what it was like to be the general manager, a leader, to run a whole group. Well, and that really must have changed your self-image about you and what you could do?
Well, so I would say the first job I took when I went to be an operator was at the Baltimore Sun, and I had 3 employees. And so I was doing new ventures for them. And a great female executive came in to be the publisher, and she asked me if I wanted to run the sales division, which was about $250 million in revenue and hundreds of employees. And I'd never been on a sales call in my life. And I knew the right answer.
Well, you had been the one buying.
Yeah, I'd been. Yeah. So I knew the right answer to her was yes.
Wow.
And I walked out of there and called my husband, and I said, I have no clue what I'm doing. And he said, yes, you do.
Oh, this is great. So why not?
Yeah, why not?
Oh, this is good. I think you need a T-shirt made up for this. So as you went through each of these, it sounds to me like this was an incremental. This wasn't, back to your comment about serendipity, you didn't know that you would be CEO of a company that, is just got a $100 million, investment. You would not have, you wouldn't have envisioned yourself that far. You were willing to do the why not.
It was really at each step of the way. So I was in a media company. The internet started. There were no browsers. You could start to think ahead about the ways in which it could disrupt traditional media.
Yeah.
And just wanted to learn more about it.
One of the things, just hearing you talk about the Baltimore Sun and then knowing you work with Carol Bartz, who I hadn't mentioned to you, I've been on a board with, amazing. And I don't know if you worked with Marissa or not at Yahoo. You did, I think.
No,
you didn't. But at least in those 2 cases, you also had senior women that you were working with. So there was a sense, and that's a rarity. I didn't have that in my career. And it may not have been the 2 of them. How did other people play a role? Clearly your husband did, and that's me too. And I think all of us, one of the things I've thought about my own career, when I'm about to get up on stage doing something, okay, at this point, I'm on live TV or whatever, if I screw up, I know I'm going to be home and be loved. The rest of the world might be laughing that I fell off the chair in the middle of the live interview. My mother will be embarrassed, but my husband will still love me. So it's good to, whether it's a dog. And by the way, I just saw your app. You guys really have to look at the WAG app. And I'm talking to Nilu and Meredith, by the way. You guys love dogs. You got to get the WAG app. Because because you're going to be loved at the end of the day. So I think that's an important thing. But who else in your career, how did you get advice when you went through your career? Did somebody else help you? Did you have sponsors, mentors? How did other people play a role as you went through your trajectory?
Yeah, it's really interesting. We were having a conversation at the company today, and I think I have a group of the women from my company here. Where are you?
Oh yeah, the Waggers.
Yes,
awesome.
welcome.
Yay! Do you call yourselves Waggers? Wagsters, of course. That's much cooler. Sorry. Wagster.
We were talking about this earlier today. I think I never used the term mentor. It wasn't part of the vernacular at the time.
Yeah.
That having been said, I met people who were a lot smarter than I was, who had a lot more experience than I did.
Yeah.
And developing, and you find that you're naturally attracted. I always find myself naturally attracted to people who have those characteristics.
Yeah.
And having the opportunity to develop a relationship in which you can ask for advice or say, I'm really uncertain. How would you approach this?
Yeah.
And having them kind of in your back corner, really cheering you on, has been pivotal. And I will also add that just because of the odds of it in the business world and in technology, many more of them have been men than have been women.
Yeah, same. And they're great male allies. It starts with Jamie today and putting this together. I agree. And by the way, I love the fact there are a lot of men in the audience because diversity means, all male and all female teams underperform mixed teams. So we love that you're here because that means this is a better audience. We love it. One of the things I want to get to is some sort of down and dirty tricks and tips from Hilary. But before that, listening to the earlier panel, one of the things I realized looking at your portfolio, you've done media, you've done LifeLock, security, but oriented towards consumers, and now WAG as a Wagster. selling to consumers. But you've been watching the arc of how we, sell things to consumers and those over time. I'd love to get your sense of the arc of that, because that has shifted. And whether we're enterprise or strictly consumer, we're selling to people at the end of the day. How's it changed?
What's really changed, I think, is there are so many more ways today to get insights to how your target consumer is thinking and to understand what their behaviors are and what their emotions are. So when you think about the amount of data you had to be able to interpolate that, call it 10 years ago, even to today, is orders of magnitude different. And I would say one of the truths about consumer marketing and consumer brands is you can talk to your consumers, and often they can't tell you what they really want. And I can't tell you how many marketing launches that I did that were total mistakes because the consumer said that was what they wanted.
Yeah. Steve Jobs would say that. Don't ask the consumer directly.
I mean, an example would be at LifeLock, we were doing identity theft protection. And when you would sit down in any large kind of quantitative or qualitative research, they would say they cared passionately about privacy and their own privacy, the ways that it would be compromised, and that they'd love a product that would help them manage that. So, you launch a product, and it turns out they really want it, but they don't want to pay for it.
Yeah.
So,
and they want to ease of use and downloading me. It's like, get through terms of use. Yes, I agree to all those privacy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, the reality of really getting into the emotion and the unmet needs, and then the beauty. We talked about the power of Facebook, but the beauty of Facebook and Instagram and all these other platforms is you don't even have to develop the product in order to test it with landing pages.
Yeah. And again, you guys, it was great listening to the prior, panel, because again, a lot of people, when you think about marketing and consumer, to me, as an enterprise software investor, one of the things that shifted, business or jobs that has shifted the most over time is that whole marketing side of things. It used to be more about color and presentation, and now it's very data-driven, and you heard that on the prior panel, how metrics-driven they are. But you guys, therefore, are tracking all kinds of metrics around, if you're looking at all that sentiment, et cetera, and how your customers are using the app, trying,
It's all the analytics.
That's great.
You've heard it a lot just in the period of time I've been here, but some of the most valuable people in any of our companies are the data scientists.
Yes, exactly.
And the people who can really identify the leading indicators that help you iterate more quickly.
That's great. So when I was thinking about this panel, see, again, that's something I'm talking to multiple, as a serial entrepreneur, as a female successfully, serial entrepreneur, you really are a unicorn. So I would love to get a sense from you of sort of what are the things you really think of personally about as a leader. So I'll start with your leadership style. How would you describe your leadership style? What do you think of yourself that way?
So I would describe my leadership style as calm, authentic, and vulnerable. So those are attributes. I'd say the vulnerability is one I learned the power of over time, which is early on in my career, I tried to dress in a very male-looking way and try to act in a very specific way. And the more confident I became, the more I realized that the vulnerability of being able to say in front of the whole company, I got this wrong.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. These are the things that I commit to in terms of making sure that in the future we have more input on these kinds of decisions.
Yeah.
The ability to sit down with your top executives and to say, I don't really know whether we should do path A or path B. Let's talk about it. And the power that gives to the people in the organization is really high. I would say that is my personality approach.
Yeah.
And I'd say I really combine that with really empowering the executives on my team. I've learned a long time ago that sometimes if I have really smart people on the team, they'll bring me ideas.
Yeah.
And I totally don't get it. Like I can look at it and say, wow, I really just don't get this. But I've learned that if you have really smart people and they're very excited about what they're showing you, that even if you don't get it, if you give them the power to go execute, 8 times out of 10, they'll iterate and they'll make it happen.
Oh, that's great. And then how do you build leaders in your organization over time? How do you coach the men and the women on your team? How do you build that? Because it sounds like you're giving, first of all, you give them a lot of opportunity, which is great, to try things. But how do you think about developing your leadership team?
So this is a really weird analogy. If any of you think back to high school biology, when you looked in a microscope, you'd look at a single cell entity called an amoeba. And the thing that was really cute about an amoeba was that because it's a single cell, if the front moves, the back has to move and vice versa. So if you see them move, they kind of look like this. And in my mind, I feel like my core job is to enable an organization, a culture, a set of behaviors that act like an amoeba. And what I mean by that is that if you get the right executives at the table, if you make sure you've got the 0 asshole quotient, if you make sure that there's respect, and that you norm, form, and storm about the strategic priorities and the operating priorities, you can then step back as the leader and just be part of the team, because the team will move together. And when you see that happens, it feels like magic.
Well, it is funny. I think about culture, and I love hearing that it came up so commonly across to all. And some people think, oh, is culture just touchy-feely? I think culture is WWHD. What would Hilary do? And really, what would the amoeba do? What would the wagster do? If I'm a good wagster, what would I do in this circumstance? And I think that's really what culture buys you in an organization, which I think is really amazing. One of the things that came up, Caitlin, I think, mentioned about a lot of the education she's been doing, and again, sort of a common theme coming across a lot of these, but one of them was around the difficult decisions, the difficult conversations. Talk about some of the toughest days on the job and the toughest decisions you've had to make over time and what those were.
Yes. So I would say I had to really think about this. And I think the hardest decision that I ever had to make, and it was interesting because I've talked to you about this, why not? Why not? We were living on the East Coast, and I had 2 job opportunities, one in Austin, Texas, and one in San Francisco. And the year was 2000. And I knew that my path was taking me down technology and consumer tech. And my husband and I have had to work to balance both of our careers. And so we went to go visit both locations and talk to both companies. And San Francisco in the Bay Area, it was the peak of the housing market. I had a 2, 4, and 6-year-old.
Wow.
I was moving a nanny with me, and I couldn't afford a house. And
practical.
My husband wasn't sure. He was in technology, but he didn't have a job yet. And so we struggled with this, and we made the decision to go to Austin. And right after we made that decision, that night, I woke him up, and I said to him, wow, we made a big mistake. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, we allowed ourselves to be fear-driven in terms of like why that we won't be able to afford a house and that we won't be able to figure it out. And that got us to this Austin decision. And the reality is we're lucky. Like, we have always been able to figure it out. So if we really believe we're lucky and that we don't know the answer, then the right answer is actually moving to the Bay Area, even if we don't know the follow-on impacts of it. And so that was quite embarrassing because I'd already turned down the San Francisco job and accepted the other job. So I had to go back to the board of directors and beg. But that was...
Did you?
Yes. And I became the CEO of Red Herring. So
and that led to so much.
Yes.
That was the right decision. It was interesting, the last panel, the safe decision is the risky decision.
Yes.
That would have been, and given what happened to Austin during that time frame, but didn't end up, I love Austin.
But I feel like I like Austin too, but I like the Bay Area more.
And
And I would say...
Awesome.
Day to day, even on my team, I am the optimist. Like, it doesn't matter what happened during the day.
Yeah.
Somehow, I look at it all, and this is the true story. I drive home every day, and I do this mental dialogue with myself, which is, was today a win or a loss? And it's already a predetermined answer that every day is a win. And so even on the really bad days, and the bad days can be things like, not just like I'm worried about business results, or I lost an executive, or somebody on the team that I'm worried about what it means for the team. A bad day can be a day in which I said something to someone that I meant as a joke, but they didn't take it as a joke because
I just dissed Austin and Dell's one of our sponsors like that. Okay, just thought I'd put that out there. Just as an example.
But we all have those moments. So when I'm driving home, I do this mental list, and the reason why I decide every day is a win is I'm not going to make that mistake again.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's it. And you learned. Mm-hmm. You did something. Mm-hmm. Well, on the flip side of the hard things, let's talk about victories. First of all, like, think in your mind, victories sometimes are not the things, again, they're not always the day we sold for $2.3 billion, although I'm sure that was a good day. I suppose. But how do you celebrate victories too? So what is a victory that you can think of, and how do you think about celebrating victories as a leader in a company and what it means?
Yeah, so we do, I feel like victories are every day we set a new record in terms of the number of people we serviced, or the frequency with which we service. We try to find ways to either celebrate them by talking about them, recognizing in emails or in Slack the people who created it, and then just creating the fun moments along the way. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of money in the world of startups if people show up and they have a bandana for on Pride Day that is a dog bandana that has the rainbow on it.
Oh, that's great.
It stands for your values, it stands for what we celebrate, and it stands for the business we're in.
That's great. Yeah, it is. It's like saying thank you. You can't say it enough, I think, to a team, and all the acknowledgement that goes with it. So if you look back now and think, what is, and again, you have a room full of people that would love to emulate your success. What is your superpower? What quality do you think within you has led you to make all these decisions, take these risks, call back that board and say, no, I wanted the job?
I think there's really this idea of listening to others, listening to yourself.
Yeah.
And getting better at listening to yourself instead of quieting the voices in your mind, really trying to tune in to what they're telling you.
That's great. Well, and then I'll end with, what's the piece of advice that you would love to give this room full of male and female entrepreneurs that want to be successful going forward? What should they be thinking as they're leaping forward?
My one piece of advice to all of you is just go by the mantra, feedback is a gift.
It is.
It is the biggest gift. And so to the extent that you can go around, and whether it's meeting with the people on your team and creating an environment where you can have them say, hey, tell me what's not working here.
Yeah, it's back to your Petri dish. Failure is feedback.
Tell me what you want more of. Tell me what you want less of. And to not react when people tell you you got it wrong, and just thank them. Say thank you. And you can decide whether to agree with the feedback or to not agree with the feedback. But I wouldn't recommend that you do that in person.
That's not so good.
I would recommend you do that in your mind, and you decide which of those pieces you really want to take to heart and use it as you think about how you're going to modify who you're going to be tomorrow when you come to work.
Well, since you're not done doing this and you're going after a $70 billion market, gosh, we all wish you the biggest success. That is great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Hilary. This is a real treat. That was fun.
All right, well, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We are highly aware we are the last thing standing between you and happy hour, so we'll try to keep our remarks pointed and brief. But what a great event, another great year.
Yeah.
Again, thank you so much to Jamie for hosting us. And let us close it out. Yeah?
Yeah, thank you.
And let us close it out with just sort of some of our thoughts. So I'll start. Going back to where I started, I think you saw today each of the women that was up here really has a big idea and it is chasing a big dream, whether it's Liz rethinking security operations, Trina rethinking medical apparel, Sarah rethinking how we manage and bring in the most valuable assets within our company, our people, going after really transformative opportunities within each of their industries, and we encourage you all to do the same.
If you think about it, the best athletes in the world have coaches. And when you're an entrepreneur, it's not always easy to find that great coach. But I think what we got here today was the best coaching session ever if you're trying to start a business. And some of it was around the people aspect of it, which I thought was really fascinating. So, on the panel, we talked about the issue of imposter syndrome, especially when as a female, we tend to fall victim to that. And I love some of the lines, be comfortable with the uncomfortable. It's riskier not to take a risk. You don't have to get everything right. And I think that's actually so important. We always talk about this. It's really important to know how to ask the right questions, so much more so than having every answer. And it is okay not to have the answer. Confidence and honesty and how you balance those things, right? And knowing that what's really fun about starting a company and being an entrepreneur is actually the hard stuff, right? If it was easy, everybody would do it. But it's figuring out the impossible is when someone tells you, you can't do this, you won't get funded, it's too hard, and actually proving them wrong. And having that honesty with your employees because they want the same thing. They want to know that they solved the impossible. So knowing that you're going through the hard times together is really important. Now, Sarah touched on this. The crap lands on the CEO's desk. So you have to be prepared for that because the good stuff, the team takes care of everything, but the crap lands on your desk and you've got to be willing to reinvent yourself every 6 months. So don't underestimate the journey and the people aspect of the journey. And it's not just about the people that you're leading, but it's about yourself as well. So I just found this to be one of the best coaching sessions ever.
Yeah, no kidding. I just think it's great. Well, I will do the wrap of the wrap. First, again, by thanking March Capital, by thanking EY. Dell, I owe you for the Austin comment, so now I have to do you a big favor, because I'm actually a big Dell fan for lots of reasons. I even think the whole take private thing was really rocking. So again, thank you. And what a great opportunity, because you're going to get a lot of opportunity to network with each other. Your peers, again, male and female, are some of your best coaches. Develop that sense of trust you can get. One of the things that came across listening today to these women, they consciously invested in themselves in different ways. People use coaches, people talk to their peers, they're self-analytical, they've gone to classes. Keep doing that. Again, it's like being the best athlete. I will say from doing one of these closes with Nilu a few years ago, I picked up the Coach K, the Duke basketball coach, Coach K, next play. This whole idea that failure's feedback, which Hilary so eloquently talked about. I didn't know that I'd be having Miley Cyrus. It's all about the climb. It's like a new one, but I think it really is. And I just wish everybody in this room the best of luck. I mean, if you're doing it right, you're climbing and learning and growing, right as you're toppling into the grave. That's what life is about. It is about the process, and you have to love the process and the challenge and the joy, sometimes of skin your knees, but still crossing the finish line ultimately that it's all about. And as entrepreneurs, sometimes you feel very alone. So again, take advantage of having the people around you. Build good networks here and take some of this forward and enjoy and success to you all.
And to add on that, by the way, there are we had amazing women on stage, but there are some of the most remarkable women I know in the audience who
Yeah,
didn't make
I know
it to
exactly.
this stage. And I'm not going to call you guys out, although, no, I won't call you out. But really get to know, there are remarkable people at the conference, no question, but there are amazing women who are in this audience who aren't on stage, but are world leaders in what they do. So take the time to network. We're about to go there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's going to be fun. The fun
And there are more
continues.
female entrepreneurs every year, so you're joining a class. So let's take the world on.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you so much.
Jamie.